It's time for Recipe of the Day. Yes, you can air fry pork chops, especially if they are on the thicker side, 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch. And my favorite ones to use are the bone-in center cut chops. Those are usually a thicker 3/4 inch to 1 inch. They're still a leaner cut of pork, but with the bone in there, that adds like extra juiciness and extra flavor. So now why am I saying to go with a thicker cut chop? It's just because if they're thinner, they're going to cook really quickly and they won't brown before they start drying out. So if they're thicker, they're going to take that little bit longer. So you're going to get some browning on them. I still do like to do like some seasonings with some texture, like a coarser black pepper on there, just so that it looks like it has a little bit more like color on it, because it's not going to get really brown in the short amount of time that it takes to cook. Now, if you wanted to do something thinner or if you wanted to get really brown for sure, I recommend my air fryer pork cutlet recipe. That has you breading the pork. You can use a thinner cut for that, and then the breadcrumbs get brown in the time that it's in there. And so that will work just fine if you have anything that's thinner. So now you can, of course, brine these pork chops before you cook them. It's always a good thing to do, except I'm assuming that if you're thinking of putting the pork chops in the air fryer, you're kind of in a hurry, and so you're not going to spend the time on that extra step. Same goes for a marinade. Instead, just season them up really well. So you're going to get as many pork chops as you can fit into your air fryer. Mine will fit 2 easily. So if I'm doing 4, I will cook 2 of them first, keep them tented with foil, then do the other 4, and then put them all back in just for a minute to warm them all through. Okay, so you have your, say, 4 bone-in center cut chops that are at least 3/4 of an inch thick. You're going to mix together a teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of pepper, a half teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Turn your air fryer to 390 degrees Fahrenheit, and then pat those pork chops dry. It just helps a little bit with that browning. Why not do it? And then you're going to rub both sides of each pork chop with just a little bit of olive oil. It's about a tablespoon total for all 4 of them. And so once they're rubbed on both sides with the oil, then you can season both sides with your little mixture, and then you're going to cook them for 5 minutes at 390 degrees Fahrenheit, and then flip and cook for another 5 to 7 minutes. What you're looking for is a temperature between 145 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. 145 is the lowest recommended temperature for safety by the USDA, and that's going to be just a little bit on the pink side, and the pork is going to be juicy and delicious. But a lot of us grew up with having our pork having to be higher temperature to be considered safe, more like 160. So if that's you, you can leave it in for a little bit longer. Then you're going to take those out of the air fryer basket and dig in. Or like I said, if you had a couple of them waiting, you would then just reheat them in the air fryer just for a moment to heat them back through. Or, you could keep them warm in the oven. So as you're doing that first 2 in the air fryer, you could set your oven to 180 degrees Fahrenheit and then put those first 2 chops in that warm oven to stay warm while the other 2 cook. That's going to work also. Okay, I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is September 18th of 2025. And I will just remind you that in this day and age, with all that AI stuff all over the place, you don't know for sure who is creating the recipes. If an actual person has created them, has an actual person tasted them, have they tried it in a real air fryer, in a real oven? That is really hard to tell, but you know for sure that a real person has developed the recipe and tested it and tasted it when you are making my recipes. So bookmark cookthestory.com and thecookful.com, or when you're searching on Google, search for my full name, Christine Pittman, plus the recipe that you're looking for. So for instance, Christine Pittman air fryer pork chops, and you will find all my recipes from either site. And that's just a quick shortcut to know that you can trust those recipes. I test them all myself. They turn out delicious every time. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.